This is part 2 of our training video on Introduction to Server Database Operations. In part 1 we covered the pre-job and job start steps, and in this video we'll be focusing on the real-time monitoring and post-job steps, which both relate to office personnel as these steps are carried out directly in the server database. If you've not yet watched part 1 of this video, then I would suggest that you watch this first before continuing. So for the whole of this video I'm going to be working in the server database. So just as a quick reminder how to access the server database, when you first open WellSeeker, you'll always open it and access the last local database you are in, and then in order to access the server database, you're going to select File, SQL Server Databases, Connect to Remote Database. Now if you've already accessed the server database previously on this particular machine, all of your details will still be saved, and if you've selected to save the passwords as well, these will also be saved. So all that you will need to do is hit the connect button. It will tell you that database connection has been established, and you can see at the bottom of your screen again that you are now connected to your remote database. In this section we'll be looking at the real-time monitoring tools available within the server database. When you have a large database and a lot of jobs running at the same time, these tools can help to make managing and monitoring the jobs a lot easier. While these tools can be accessed within both the local and the server database, they are specifically designed for the server, where data is being pushed from the rigs. So to access these features, we select the Tools menu, Dashboards, and we can see that we've got 4 options available to us. We've got AC Dashboard, Rigs Online Dashboard, Logistics Dashboard, and Activity Dashboard. So the first one that we're going to take a look at is the Rigs Online Dashboard. And this will open up the Rigs Online dialog, and any rigs in the field that are pushing data back to the server will populate in here. So you're going to get a table with the job number, the rig, the operator, the well, the day DD and the night DD, the time since the last update. So you can see that it's there's been an update happened just recently, but there we can now see that it's now been a minute since the last update. So this is a really good place to see if you're having issues, you're noticing that certain wells are not updating on the server. You can go in here and you can check the last time the information was pushed, and this could tell you if maybe there's a problem on the rig where they're not able to actually push the data for whatever reason, maybe a problem with internet connection, or somebody's just put the wrong details in. It also tells you the status of that particular well. So in this case, you would be expecting that all the ones that are pushing information back will be active, although something may have changed. The guys may have changed the status for any particular reason. Again, it will show up on here. It also tells you the version of WellSeeker that they're using and the computer name. So if you've got a lot of wells running, you may find that you have a very large list in here that tells you of all the information that's being pumped back. Within the Files menu there are 2 main options. So Show WITS Connection. So this is basically just going to have another table that will show you very similar information to this, but it just shows you the wells that are not just pumping data back using the real-time data exchange, and this is like survey data, daily reports, BHAs, but also the wells that are pushing back WITS data. So again, you can push this data back without having WITS connection, but if you've got the WITS connection, you can select this Show WITS Connections and it will show you those. The last option that we have available within here is the Print Daily Summary, and if I select that, this will open up a PDF report, and within the PDF report it will give us a summary of all the wells that are active and standby selected in the status option within the daily reports. And it just tells you again some basic information about it: job numbers, operators, wells, the 24-hour summary and the 24-hour look ahead from the last daily report that was pushed back, the current depth, and the number of active and standby rigs and total rigs. So a useful summary table for you. So the next dashboard that we're going to take a look at is the Activity Dashboard. Now the Activity Dashboard provides an overview of all the wells on the SQL Server database, and there are a few different things going on in this particular dialog. So at the top we can currently see that we have our summary. We can also show the well details, which I'll show you in a moment, but at the moment we are looking at the summary. And these summary plots, the one on the left here, this is a summary by customer. We can see we've got 3 operators in our database, and you've got a list of the number of active wells, standby, upcoming and on TD, and then we can see the monthly revenue based on the information that we've got in the database. On the right hand side we've got job summary by coordinator. So these are directional drilling coordinators that are here, but from the view menu you can change this to filter them by MWD coordinators, and all that does is it just, in this drop down here for coordinators, and up here that will just show you the MWD coordinators that are assigned to any given job. We just take that back off. These are now our DDs. So this just shows us within the summary the DD coordinators and the various number of wells that they are dealing with and the revenue based on that as well. And the last chart is the job summary by state. So again, depending on the state that you've got selected for your daily reports, will give you the number of active, standby, upcoming and wells which have been TD'd within the database, and the daily revenue and the monthly revenue if that information is available in there as well. Down the bottom what we have is a list of the wells within the database depending on the filters as they've been selected. So currently the filter here is selected as active. We can take off the filter here and we can see that that will then list all the wells that we've got. But if we pop this back onto active again, we can quickly and easily see that we've got 4 active wells. It gives us the relevant information that we need for each of these. And then if we click on a given line, what it will do is it will change the view from being the summary to being the well details. So again, this was specific for the line that you're on, so depending on the line that you've got selected, it will have the information that's relevant to that individual well. So in this case we've chosen 3H, and on the top left we've got a depth time curve. Below that we've got some information specifically for the customer, job number, current activity, so the last activity on the most recent daily drilling report, what is the current BHA, and then current depth, the last survey depths, personnel on site, what's happened over the last 24 hours. And in the view menu we have a couple of options for displaying within our depth versus time chart, and at the moment we've got it selected to phases, so this is broken up based on the phases, but you can select it so that it's broken up based on the BHAs, or you can also do it based on the activity. The activity is usually a lot going on in here, so you end up with it's not quite as clear sometimes. It's usually the phase and the BHA are the best ones to display on, but it's entirely up to the user what they prefer. And then over on the right hand side we've got some revenue tracking information and some inventory information. So again, based on everything that has been pushed back from the rig that is within the daily reports, it will give you information on the revenue over the course of the well, and then how many motors, how many drill collars, how many stabilizers. So it all depends on the inventory that you have. The more information or the more components you've got in your inventory, the more lines there will be on these particular charts. Now, when you have a particular line selected or a particular well selected, if you are looking to find that well within your database tree, then you select your line and you can select File, Open Selected Well in Tree, and that will open the well for you. So it makes it very quick and easy for you to find it, especially if you've got a very large database. So in addition to the data that we can see displayed on the main interface itself, there are a few reports that we can print out, and we can print these out via the File menu. So the 4 that we've got available to us are the Job Board, Motor Overview, Motor Forecast and MWD Forecast. So if we look at the Job Board first, This is going to print an Excel document, and within this Excel document we've got 5 different tabs, and I'll just take you through each of these tabs one at a time. So the first one is our active tab. So this is going to give us a list of all the active wells that we currently have in our database, along with some relevant information for them. We have an upcoming and standby. So again, anything that is marked as upcoming or standby within the daily reporting feature of the software, they will then be printed off in here again with the relevant information associated with them. So it's very quick and easy as a user to then have this report to show what have I got active, what have I got upcoming, what have I got standby. In the revenue tab, we can see any revenue for the given wells within a specific date range. And this date range is specified within the dashboard itself, revenue forecast, and then you can select one of 4 options. So you can select the calendar month, last 30, 60 or 90 days. So based on this selection here, that will determine the date range up here, and then any wells within the database that have costs associated with them and that land within this particular date range will be displayed here, and this will give you the total value. Within the daily revenue, it's split up in the same way. The only difference is you get all the same wells, but it gets broken down more so you can see the daily costs associated with each of the given wells, if there are costs associated. If not, you can see that these cells will be left blank. And then the final tab, the summary tab, breaks down the active and the upcoming wells based on operator, state and coordinator, and it will just list how many active we've got and show the different customers they're for, same with the upcoming, and then same for the state, and then by our different coordinators. So the next thing we'll look at is the print motor overview. And the print motor overview is going to give us an overview of all of the motors on the selected wells. So we can see at the top we've got our 4 active wells that have been selected in the dialog, and for each of these wells it's going to give us a list of the motors. So the serial number, description, size, is it clean or dirty, and is it in the hole. Now the next 2 options, the print motor forecast and the print MWD forecast, these are all based on the motor forecasting and MWD forecasting available from the tools menu. And within both of these, this is where you will define your requirements for your motors or your MWD. So your job number, all the information regarding the client, the shipping date, estimated end date, and your motor configuration, and you put all of this information in here, which is accessible via this dialog as well. But if you want to print off a report, then you can do that via the well dashboard and print motor forecast. And this gives us 3 tabs in our report. So the first motor forecast tab, this gives you a breakdown by tool size, by customer, by coordinator and by state. It also looks at the date that they're required. So in our case, all of our motors are not required for over 60 days, and it tells us how many of each size, etc. In the motor details section, this basically is just the table that we saw previously in the dialog. This gives you all of the information for all of the motors that you have in there, and the big thing that you'll look at in here is the days until required. So for the length of time until these are required, they're all green, but once you start getting into the 30 days, 7 days, these will start to change colour to reflect that they will be required in the more immediate future. And the last thing that we've got is we've got a forecast chart. So the forecast chart just gives us the same information, only this time it fills in the cells so that we can see how many motors we require on a given day for their required jobs. And it's exactly the same for the MWD forecast. So again, you've got the MWD forecast tab with the broken down for job, customer, coordinator, state. The MWD details based on everything that you've got in your MWD forecast dialog, and then again the forecast chart, which just allows you to quickly see how many of these are all required at the same time. So that now covers everything in the activity dashboard. We'll now take a look at the logistics dashboard, and again this can be accessed via the tools menu, dashboards, logistics dashboard. So the logistics dashboard is split up into 3 different sections. So on the top left hand side we have our map, and this map will show us all the wells that we have got based on our selection in the well status. So at the moment we've got active wells selected. So this is all of the wells that are active in the database. This is all of their locations, and if we click on any of these given pins, it will then show us the inventory that is associated with those given wells. We have the job number, the rig, and the name of the actual well. And we can see it gives us the serial number, the type of component that it is, and whether or not it's clean or dirty. And we can see that for any of the wells that we have on here. We can zoom in and out using the scroll button on our mouse. We can use the plus or minus symbols here, and if we want to, we can also look at it in a satellite image as well. Over on the right hand side in the logistics dashboard, we've got a chart that will show us the various different rigs that we have got selected. So again, based on our filters along here, so these are the rigs associated with active wells, and for each of these it displays the various components that we have in the inventory on those rigs. And if you hover over those, it just shows you the type and how many we have. So here we've got 8 subs, 2 MLWD and 4 clean motors. Down the bottom we have got a listing of all of the components that we have in the various inventories on all of our active wells as we've got them selected here. And some of these are highlighted in yellow and some are not, and the ones that are highlighted in yellow is basically showing these as dirty opposed to the clean. So it's just a very quick way for you to see if a component has been run at least once on a given job. Now if you select a line for any component, when you do, it will reset the map, and if we now take a look, we can see that one of our pins has become blue, and that just highlights that this particular component is on this rig. And if you were to click on here, you would find that component within the inventory that is showing up on here. We can also further filter this based on the tool type, the well status, the state and the county, and also a serial number search as well. So if we were to search, for example, for motors, when we select the motors, it will filter our list that we have at the bottom of the dialog. It will update these graphs so that they show only the motors on any given rig. So again, here we can see we have 10 motors on the Pattison 142, 5 are clean, 5 are dirty, and we have 4 on our other 2. And it will also update in here. If we click on any of these pins, you can see it's now only showing us the motors. And again, this can be filtered further to show the dirty ones as well, or the clean, or whatever else you want to select, in hole, failed, or ready for backload. So the logistics dashboard is a very useful way for you to track all your inventory that you have. So you have all of your rigs pushing data back, they're keeping their inventories up to date, and every time they push back it will update their inventories based on any changes that they've made on the rig. This will update within the server database, and you will be able to then track all of this information within the one location via the logistics dashboard. So the final dashboard that we have available to us is the Anticollision Dashboard. Within WellSeeker, it's possible to have multiple real-time anti-collision dialogues open at the same time. In this situation, the anti-collision dialog can be a useful tool as it shows the closest centre-to-centre distance and separation factor on each of the open real-time anti-collision dialogues. This allows the user to see the wells of most concern from each of the open dialogues in one place. Now there are two ways that the user can set up this dialog to use. The first way is that they can go in and they can manually open any surveys that they want to monitor. They can then select the relevant offset wells and then open the real-time anti-collision dialog for each of those wells manually. And when you do that, as soon as you open the real-time anti-collision dialog for them, this dialog will start to populate with the relevant information. Now the second and simpler way to do this would be to select the File menu and select this option here to open real-time anti-collision for active wells. And this will open up the Select Wells option, which will show us, to begin with, all of the active wells that we have in our database. If we scroll along to the right hand side, we can see that there is a select option, so we don't have to open all of them. We can choose which ones we want to open or which ones we don't want to open. So in this case, if we just select the top two. Now in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select OK, and when I do that, it's going to open. The first thing we'll see is that it opens the surveys for the two wells that I've got selected. It then also opens up the real-time anti-collision dialog for those two wells as well. So this has done the job for me without me having to go and select it. It's done it automatically based on my selection. And now we can see that after a few seconds, the anti-collision dashboard has populated with some information. And in this case, it's showing the centre-to-centre distance. We don't have any separation factor populating in here, and that's because if you want to monitor the separation factor, you would have to come in and turn this on yourself. So in our case, if we turn on the separation factor for this particular well, we'll do the same for this one as well. And you've got to give it a little minute for it to update, but what will happen is once it's updated, we'll see that the AC dashboard will populate with the separation factor in here as well. And we've now got two additional lines. One that shows us the centre to centre and one that shows us the separation factor. Now in this case, it just so happens that it's the same point for both of these, for both the lowest separation factor and the lowest centre to centre distance are on the same well. So these lines are duplicated in here, but sometimes you'll find that the separation factor, the lowest separation factor at this point is against a different well, and the lowest centre to centre distance is against a different well. So in many cases you will find that these lines will be different. And this is based on the fact that information will be being pumped back from the server on a regular basis. So your surveys will be updated, and as your surveys update in the server, they will then update with the real-time anti-collision dialogues will update in line, and therefore the anti-collision dashboard will also update in line as well. This is most useful when you have multiple real-time anti-collision dialogues open. If you only have one open, there's probably not much benefit from having it open on its own. The other thing is, this doesn't tell you all the information. It just gives you the lowest centre-to-centre distance or the smallest separation factor. This will just highlight potentially one issue, but it's designed so that it pushes the user to go and look at the specific real-time anti-collision dialog so that they can then see what's happening, and they may find that there's more than one issue that needs to be addressed. If we take another quick look at this option, there was an option down the bottom that I didn't mention, and this is to update the offset selection. Now, when I selected the values that I wanted to in here, and I then hit OK, it opened up the real-time anti-collision dialog with the offset wells that were already selected. The last time someone had been into the survey, they had selected offset wells. Those were the offset wells that were being used. In this situation, you can override that and you can update the offset selection. And you can select a distance from well, and the software will then use a radius of this given distance, and it will automatically select any wells that are within that radius from the surface location of your selected well. And you can choose to include your principal plan, include non-principal plans, and include the actual well bores as well. And once you do that and hit OK, it will do exactly the same as what happened previously. The only difference is it may pick up additional wells. You don't then have to go and double check. And you can see that as I close my real-time anti-collision dialogues that we had open, once this had updated, there is no more information for it to see, so it's gone back to being blank. Just close this now. The only other thing to mention is the show hide option. And the show hide option just allows you to select which of these columns you want to see. You may or may not want to see all of these, and this just gives you the option of just adding or removing whichever ones you want to see. In addition to the 4 dashboards I've just introduced, there's one additional dashboard that can be very useful for real-time monitoring, and that's the DD dashboard. The DD dashboard provides a detailed overview of a specific well and is accessed via the slide sheets. So we've got a couple of surveys open. I'm just going to close one of these. You have to have a survey open in order to be able to access a slide sheet. So in this case, we've got our lateral survey open for 3H. And we'll access the slide sheet, and from within the slide sheet we are able to access the DD dashboard either via this little option here or via the tools menu, directional drillers dashboard. Now there's a lot of information in this dashboard, and I'm not going to be going into any real detail here as there's a separate training video that covers this. So for this video I just want to highlight how to access it, which we've seen is through the slide sheet, and a brief overview. So within this dashboard we have got down the left hand side, we've got some gauges. Now these will take any WITS data that we have been receiving and they will display them here for us, so we can clearly see some of our input feeds. And these gauges are all adjustable, so if you didn't want to have RPM but instead you wanted to have weight on bit here, for example, you could make an adjustment here. We have a tool face rose in the center, and this will give us our bit position, or the position of our last survey in comparison to the principal plan, which will always be the center of the tool face rows. If we have any tool faces that are being received, then these will be displayed on here as well, along with our effective tool face. We also have some information here regarding projections and recommendations, so the software can look at where we are, look at some parameters that we've set up, and it will give recommendations regarding whether or not we want to slide or rotate. Down the bottom we have got real-time anti-collision information, so this is the same information that we would have in our real-time anti-collision dialog, but instead it's just displayed on here. This is a shortened version, but we have the ability to change a selection, which will then show us everything that we need. It also shows us our last 4 surveys and any slides seen and calculated motor yield based on that. And it will also give us a bit projection based on our last survey and the last point on our slide sheet. We've got our 3D chart, which shows us our survey, our principal plan, any offset wells we've got selected, lease lines, and it will also show us the automated projection that we have in here as well. And then down the bottom right hand side we've got some drilling parameters. So these are our traces based on receiving WITS feeds for things like RPM, weight on bit, pump pressure, block height, and these will just update in real time as the data is being received from the rig. And this section here, just slightly further to the right, gives us the other information that's being pumped back via the WITs. Things like hole depth, bit depth, ROPs, weight on bits, RPMs, torques. Our sensor offset information, the rig state, which determines whether or not we're sliding or rotating or tripping, and some information here about the bit hydraulics. So this has got a lot of information in one place, and if you're pumping the data back from a rig, you're also sending back WITS data. This is a really powerful dialogue, a really powerful dashboard that gives you all your information in one place. And you can come in here, and if you've got multiple wells pushing data back, at any time you can come in and open the DD dashboard for any of those wells and see all of this information in one place. In this final section, we'll be looking at the post-job steps where the well has now been TD'd and the final data has been sent in from the rig. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to check the daily reports for the well status to make sure that that has been changed appropriately to end of well report ready or end of well report sent. And in this case, it has been changed to end of well report ready. So we're happy that we now know that the field engineers have pushed the data for the last time back from the field, and by changing the well status to end of well report ready, we know that they have already gone through their QA/QC procedures, and we're confident that the data that has been sent back has at least been checked over by the field engineers before it's been sent. So that's the first thing that we want to do. The next thing that we want to look at is going to be the actual well. So we'll check the actual wellbore, and we want to check the bottom line to make sure that this ties in with the bottom line of the surveys that have been sent in from the rig. And if we've confidence that the bottom line ties in, then that's going to give us confidence that we've got all the survey points in correctly. If any survey points have been missed out, or they've not been, adjustments have been made to this particular version compared to the version that was sent in, these will generally be highlighted in the bottom line. Something will not be the same, whether it's the TVD or the local coordinates or the mapping coordinates, something will be different. So we want to check that our actual wellbore values in here are as we would expect them to be. We then want to come to our actual well, and we'll go to properties, and we want to check that the properties that we have in here are correct, and we will be checking these based on the report, the planning report from the start of the well, for things like our elevation possibly and our magnetics. If our elevation has changed, if the field engineers turned up on the rig and the elevation was not the same as in the planning report, this may be slightly different. But the main thing is, regardless of where we are checking it or what we're comparing it against, we need to make sure that the values that are in here are as we expect them to be. So we'll start off just by checking our vertical section. Really, really important, we need to check our depth reference. So we need to make sure that the rotary table, the ground level elevation, and as a result the air gap are all correct. The magnetics, again, we just want to check that these magnetics are correct, because when we do file this away as a complete well, we just want to make sure that the magnetics have been saved correctly, because this is what was used as the well was drilled and what was used for referencing when we did things like our anti-collision scans. The last thing that we will want to check will be the survey program. Now, the survey program is what we use to make up the actual wellbore. So below our actual wellbore, in this particular example, we can see we have 4 separate surveys: surface, intermediate, curve, and lateral. And together, all of these make up the survey program. So the intermediate ties on to the last survey point in the surface, curve ties on to the last survey in the intermediate, and lateral ties on to the last survey in the curve. And we can see our survey program is made up of the surface, intermediate, curve, and lateral. And we just want to check that these values that we have in here and the IPMs that we've got assigned are correct. If our bottom line does not tie in for the actual Wellbore in the way that we were expecting, it may be to do with the survey program. So that's why you want to just double check that this is correct. And once you're happy, you can just hit apply and then hit close. The next thing that we want to do is to check parts of our daily report to make sure that the daily activity values that we've got in here, the information that we've got in for each day, is correct and is accurate, and that there are no issues. So things that we would want to check are that each BHA has a 6.0 pickup code and a 6P laydown code. We want to make sure that there's no time gaps, and we want to make sure that the BHAs are correctly selected. Now, you could do this, as we've already discussed in previous sections, you could do this directly from the daily reports themselves, but in this situation, the easiest way to do that is from the actual well by right-clicking, going to reporting and selecting Daily Activity Editor. Now again, we've already gone through this in one of the previous sections, but I'll very briefly mention it again. The Daily Activity Editor just gives us all of the daily activities for the whole well in one table, which makes it nice and easy to scroll through and spot any mistakes. The other thing about this particular section is it will highlight any time that the program thinks that there is an issue, and it will draw you towards that when you open it. So if it spotted any errors, it would pop up with a dialogue to begin with to warn you of that. And then when you open it, you can scroll through, and any errors will be highlighted in red. And that's something that you'll want to check. So if the start depth here does not match the end depth here, then it will flag these two cells in red to say that there is a time gap, because we do not want that in our daily activity. If our BHAs are maybe in incorrectly, we have something different in the middle of the surface ones, it will be flagged as well. And this is just good for us to check, okay, we have a pickup code for the surface, do we have a laydown code for the surface? And we can scroll through it, and we do. And then in between, when we're running casing, we shouldn't have any BHAs in here, because we do not have a BHA in the hole. So you're looking for things like this to make sure that these cells are blank. And all that you would do is you just go through this, anything in red you would double check. As pointed out previously, any NPT activity codes will be highlighted in red. So this is completely expected. But it's just so that you know, if it's red and it catches your eye, just double check, yes, this is as it's expected to be. Go all the way through until you're happy that this is as it's supposed to be. And if you're happy with that, then that's great. If you've made any changes, hit apply and close. If you haven't had to make any changes, then all you need to do is close. So once we've gone through all of this process, and we've gone through and we've checked and we've verified that all the information that's in the daily reports is good and it's correct, we know that the directional drillers have done the same. If you've done the same, you're happy with everything, the final thing that you would want to do is you would come along and you would change the well status to verified. And this would then show anybody that comes in here and looks at this that all the process that we've gone through up to now has been followed. This has been checked by multiple people, field engineers and the relevant coordinator or manager in the office. All of the data in here is good, checked and verified. We can then hit save, and we can then close this out. Now, depending on your company's setup, that might be everything that you need to do now complete. However, some companies do maintain two server databases. One of those server databases would be a field database, and by field database what we mean is that is the database that the field engineers communicate with, and they send in the relevant data from the field and they draw down the data when they first arrive in the field. They also operate a clean database. Now, the clean database will be completely separate, and the only people that will have access to this would be the well planners and possibly the coordinators as well. Field engineers would not have access to this at all, and no data would be pulled from it or pushed to it from any field computer. So if your company operates with the two database structure like that, you may then be in a position where you want to transfer the data from the field server database to the clean server database. There are a couple of ways to do that. It would be company specific, very straightforward. You would either just right click on your actual well, select export, export this to somewhere on your computer, and then import it into the server database or the clean server database. The other option is, if you have it set up in a specific way, you may be able to go into your clean server database and actually pull the data from the field server database down. So it would almost be in the same way as the field engineers pull the data at the start of a job. It could be possible to do it that way. How you do that is completely company specific, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. It would just be a case of the data would need to be transferred across. If you do it that way, then the last thing that you would want to do is go back into the daily reporting and change the well status to transferred. And that way, that will indicate that the data has then been transferred from the field database across to the clean database, at which point is isolated and won't be adjusted again. We've now gone through part 2 of the server database operations training, where we've covered the real-time monitoring and post-job office steps. We'll now take a look at some questions. So I'll read out the questions one at a time. Once I've read out the question, if you press pause, try to answer the question and then hit play and see if your answer matches mine. Question number 1. In what dashboard can you find information about the rigs that are sending data back to the server? The rigs online dashboard. This dashboard will show you rigs that are pushing data back, and it will also show you any rigs that are sending WITs back to the server as well. Question number 2. In what dashboard can you print the job board report, which details active, standby and upcoming jobs in the database? The activity dashboard. Question number 3. Can you only access the dashboards when logged onto the server? No. The dashboards can be accessed from both the server and the local databases, but remember, to get the most out of the dashboards, you are better being logged onto the server. Server databases tend to be a lot larger, and you will also have data being pushed back from numerous rigs back to the server database, so you will always get more out of the dashboards when you're connected to the server than you will when you're logged on to just a local database. Question number 4. How do you access the DD dashboard? Unlike the other dashboards, which are accessed via the Tools menu, the DD dashboard is accessed via the slide sheet dialog. We've now completed the question and answer section, so we'll now move on to the exercise section. So the exercise for this video is to log on to your company's server database and have a play with the different dashboards. If for any reason you're unable to access the server database, you can do this on a local database, but as I mentioned a moment ago, it's always better if you can do this on the server database. And the main purpose of this exercise is to increase familiarization with these dashboards. If at any point you become stuck, refer back to the video for a refresher. This now concludes part 2 of the Well Seeker Introduction to Server Operations training video.